Welcome to PoliticKING. I'm Larry King. You know, it's been widely reported that corporations, criminals, even governments are increasingly using emerging technology against the public. But exactly how much at risk are we? My first guest warns that we are more vulnerable than we probably even realize. Marc Goodman is a cybersecurity expert. He's worked with global organizations like NATO and the UN, currently serves as senior advisor to Interpol's Steering Committee on Information Technology Crime. He's the author of the new book, Future Crimes. Everything is connected, everyone is vulnerable, and what can we do about it? Marc Goodman, by the way, was a former LA police officer. When did all this start? Cyberspace, cybercrime, when?
Yeah, so I mean, if you go back to the 60s and 70s, there have been hackers for some time. If you look at, Steve Jobs and Wozniak, those guys were hackers more in a positive sense. So there were people that were hacking mostly for good or to see what they could do with computers. It was like the birth of the computer era. And so they would push to see what they could do with the systems. But then more into the 80s and certainly by the 90s, more organized criminals started to become involved in it, and you had people who were hacking not to see if they could do it or for the laughs, but for money. And now organized crime means that cyber is costing the global economy $400 billion a year.
And where do criminals mostly use? It's not guns anymore. They don't stand up against the wall. They're not invading your homes.
Right.
What are they doing?
Well, we're seeing a big paradigm shift in crime. So the old days of crime, if you wanted to be a criminal, you go out and get a knife or a gun, you hide in a dark alley, and you say, stick them up. But criminals had a problem with that business model. You could only rob so many people a day, right?
But not very practical.
Not very practical, and a couple of risks along the way. Yeah. But technology answered that question, right? When they introduced the locomotive, now you could rob 200 people or 300 people at a time on a train robbery. And fast forward to today, if you look at the Target hack that occurred about a year and a half ago over Christmas, we had over 100 million accounts compromised. So we've gone from one person robbing one person for one person being able to rob over 100 million people. That's a fundamental paradigm shift in crime.
So the criminal, if he targets a credit card or a bank account, can literally take the money out of the account without moving?
Absolutely. They can be sitting in their apartment in Moscow or Kiev or Brazil or New York, Brooklyn, and just through the keyboard take advantage of our connections. See, there's so much good that comes from technology and all of these connections. We've been great at wiring the world, but we've failed to secure it. And that failure to secure it means that all the technical devices that we have on us, whether it be our Fitbit, our iPhones, our GPS, even our own cars, they're all computers today, and they're all hackable.
And these are all future crimes. This is the crime of tomorrow.
Well, in fact, it's already happening today. So in future crimes, I start with the cyber events that we're seeing today, right? We've seen, automobiles hacked where from halfway around the world, criminals can turn on the windshield wipers, the horn, they can turn off the brakes or explode the airbag on you. That's literally possible now, and it's been demonstrated at hacker conferences around the world. Implantable medical devices like pacemakers, cochlear implants, diabetic pumps, they're all hackable. See, cars are just computers that we ride in. It's not a 67 Chevy anymore. It's not a mechanical device. Each car has over 200 computer chips. So a car is a computer we ride in. An airplane is a computer we fly in. And a pacemaker is a computer we put in our body.
So a criminal could do something with a pacemaker in someone's body and kill them?
Absolutely. That's been talked about at hacker conferences. It's been demonstrated through a study at the University of Massachusetts where they actually wrote this up in medical journals.
So you don't need a hitman in it.
Or the hitman takes place over the internet. Right? There are 300,000 implantable medical devices in the United States that connect to the internet and that are installed every single year. So my point in writing this book was letting people know all this technology is great, but this interconnection needs more threats, and we need to protect against them.
Oh, so we don't have fingerprints, we don't have DNA. How do we solve these crimes?
Well, we have new types of DNA and new types of fingerprints, right? So we have to look for digital traces. We have to look forensically inside computer systems. But the challenge is, in the old days, we used to have a co-location of criminal, victim, crime, and police. If somebody walked into Bank of America in Times Square, we knew that the NYPD and the FBI would handle it. We knew that the criminal was in the bank. He'd leave behind DNA, fingerprints, photographs, and we knew it was all together. Now that same crime can occur from a hacker in Brazil or in California or in Turkey, and they can get into the same bank in Manhattan. So it really complicates things.
Earlier this year, cyber criminals pulled off the largest bank heist in history, over $1 billion, 100 banks in 30 countries. How'd they do that?
Well, it's fascinating. In most of these criminal attacks up until now, they've gone after individual users. So you or your kids or your wife get an email, you click on it, and you accidentally get infected. What was different about that case you're mentioning is they actually targeted the banks and the employees. The thing that makes cybercrime so difficult to investigate is that it's mostly invisible. If you've got a nice car and you go out in the morning to your garage and your car is gone, you know, hey, somebody stole my car. But if a hacker breaks into your computer system, they can sit there for months without you ever knowing. And that's what happened in that case. They broke into the bank networks for over 20 different banks, and they just watched the employees. They learned their methodologies. They were like, secret spies on the wall. And once they learned the bank procedures, they just emulated them, copied them, and sent the money into their own accounts.
Easier than the Brinks job of stopping a truck on
Yes.
the road.
It turns out the average take in a bank robbery in the United States is $4,300. Right? $4,300, you face life imprisonment. Only the dumbest of dumb would actually go into a bank with a gun. Today, you can do the same thing and get $1 billion, or in the case of a Bitcoin hack that occurred, $400 million from the Mt. Gox exchange.
What about personal privacy? Is that gone? Forget the crimes.
Yeah.
Privacy.
Well, these new tools open up all different types of privacy issues. So right now, each one of these digital devices is reporting information on us mostly, and the companies take the information because we agree to it in the so-called terms of service. Those 10,000-word little agreements that we all click on and nobody ever reads. We saw a really interesting case recently with Samsung in the UK. They've just changed their smart televisions. A lot of people have smart TVs. You can stream stuff over the internet. It's very convenient. But they required a remote control. Samsung's big improvement was they made it so you could talk to your television. You didn't need a remote control anymore. So you could say, TV on, TV off, channel 7, right? Because God forbid you could burn 3 calories by pushing on the button, so they solved that problem. But when they did that, they updated their terms of service that said, no, in order for this to work, we're recording everything that you say in front of the television. We're sending it to a third party. They're doing voice transcription and sending it back to us. So their caution was, if you're sitting in your own bedroom having a discussion with your wife, please don't say anything private in front of the television because we're listening. Right? So that was all in their terms of service. So tons of new privacy issues. If you've seen 1984, it's now come to life.
Orwell was right.
Orwell was right.
Government regulation, can they do anything?
They can do a little bit, but I have to say, and this is one of the things I point out in future crimes, is that the criminals are running so much more quickly than government, right? You don't need permissions or approvals to launch a criminal organizations, but when you think what it takes to get something past Congress, it's really tough.
Now, the Snowden leaks revealed that Facebook, Google were actually allowing the NSA to access this stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen those reports. It's very clear, and I talk about some of this, that they are, either the government will take information that it wants, particularly information overseas, or it will just buy it. They'll have multi-million-dollar contracts with American companies to give up this data, and people agree to it in those terms of service.
On a global basis, is this a bigger threat than ISIS?
It's funny, some people have alleged that, right? So your chances of being attacked, thank God, by ISIS in Newark, New Jersey or Topeka, Kansas today are very small. But your chances of becoming a victim of identity theft or cybercrime or fraud are much, much greater.
There were reports that China hacked U.S. government weather facilities, the U.S. Postal Service. To obtain what? What do you obtain from hacking a weather facility?
Yeah, so there's lots of different information there. There's massive computing power in a weather facility. It was just put out a couple of weeks ago that Russia allegedly had hacked the White House. People were talking about that. So there is not just criminals that are playing at this, but nation states. The U.S. government does this, the Russian government, the Chinese government, all are playing. And so the new battlefield is a digital one.
Could we have a cyber 9/11?
People have put that forth for a very long time. One of the challenges with that is that we have connected all of our critical infrastructures to the internet. So if you think about electricity, water, sewage, financial networks, Wall Street, air traffic control, streetlights, they're all run by computer. None of those are manual systems, and very few of them have backups. So when they fail, what is our backup plan? See, we're building our modern 21st century world on all of these awesome technologies, but they're still not secure. There's never been built a computer system yet that could not be hacked, and yet we're rushing forward connecting everything to the internet.
So you can't stop technology, and technology is ahead of the human.
Yes.
So this is very, very, very sad, and also, isn't it, pessimistic.
Well,
you can't be an optimist.
Actually, I start off with the book calling myself an irrational optimist. I'm an optimist irrationally for a few reasons. Broadly speaking, technology is going to help way more people than it hurts, right? We're going to bring 2 billion people out of poverty in the coming decades as a result of technology, radically extend human life, drastically reduce infant mortality. Kids sitting in India or Africa can use a $30 tablet and take free classes at MIT, right? Technology is fantastic, and I'm a big supporter. All I'm saying is that there's this Achilles heel that we need to pay attention to, because eventually it will come down like a house of cards. So technology can be awesome, but that brighter future isn't going to come for free. I cite in the book President Kennedy, who in the 1960s said, by the end of this decade, we're going to put a man on the moon, right? We did that. Right? We had a Manhattan Project during World War II. We've achieved phenomenal things. We've decoded the human genome. The human being's capacity for phenomenal scientific achievement is there. And what I'm suggesting is, rather than these sort of short, small steps that we're taking, we need to think big. We need a Manhattan Project for cybersecurity. And I think we'll bring together the best in the private sector, the public sector, academia, startups, and let's see what we can do to make this world the better world that we all want.
Are we on the verge of doing that?
No, unfortunately, we're nowhere near it, and that's another reason why I wrote Future Crimes, is for that call to action. Recently, when North Korea allegedly hacked Sony Entertainment Pictures, President Obama, laid blame at the North Koreans, and he said, "I'm going to talk about this during my State of the Union address." And I listened very intently, and he delivered a 6,600-word State of the Union address, of which 108 were dedicated to cyber. And some of the things that he talked about were enhanced penalties for identity thieves. If you think, putting an identity thief in jail for 6 years versus 3 years, is going to solve this, you fundamentally are just underestimating the scope and size of the problem. So I think we're going to need much bigger thinking. It was grand thinking that created the internet. Let's not forget that the internet was created by big thinkers. We're going to need more big thinkers to solve these problems.
Will this be discussed, do you think, in the 2016 political race?
I hope so. I think certainly on the national security level, it will come up. You'll see candidates talk about it. Let's not forget that President Obama and the other candidates in the last election allegedly had their campaign headquarters hacked by foreign governments, in particular the Chinese. So even once people announce their candidacy, foreign governments are going after their computers and information.
But so you remain optimistic?
There are way more good people in the world than there are bad. Human beings have solved phenomenal things. Broadly, we have a fair amount of redundancies, but currently the mindset in Silicon Valley when it comes to software and technology is just ship it, right? That was Facebook's unofficial motto. Just ship it, we'll fix it later. The problem with just ship it is that means you're sending out software that that has bugs, that has holes in it, and that's what the cyber criminals rely on to break into these systems.
Can someone resist all this by not having a cell phone, having a regular TV, and a car where he only uses it to drive and reverse and park?
You can try. It's becoming increasingly difficult.
Live digital free.
It's becoming increasingly difficult, even if you are digital free, right? Other aspects of your life are forcing you to become digital. So if you go to certain banks, certain clubs, even certain government services, they want an email address, right? I didn't have a Facebook page. A couple of weeks ago, my friend said to me, "How come you didn't come to my birthday party?" I said, "You didn't invite me." He said, "I posted it on Facebook," right? So now I'm required to read things on other people's Facebook pages if I want to go to parties.
Do you fear the worst before it gets better?
I think we're going to have a lot of bumps in the road. I think we're going to go through a relatively dark period and people start to get serious about this. Earlier I mentioned something called the Internet of Things when I was talking about smart televisions. According to Cisco, we're going to connect 50 billion new devices to the Internet by 2020, right? Here's our opportunity. Before we connect 50 billion insecure devices, let's go ahead and try to lock them down now, because it's very difficult to put the toothpaste back in the tube. People look at their lives today and they think that we're living at some sort of technological pinnacle because we've got GPS and iPhones and, self-driving cars and the like. The fact of the matter is, from a technological perspective, we are just in the first seconds of the first minutes of the first hours of the internet revolution. If today's internet is the size of a golf ball, tomorrow's metaphorically is going to be the size of the sun. That means every physical object in our space, whether it be pets, prisoners, plates, knives, forks, toasters, they're all going to be connected to the internet, have an IP address, and be online. And we're already seeing people hacking refrigerators. We recently broke up a case where refrigerators were sending out spam messages, not the spam food in the refrigerator, but spam messages. We have
what do you mean?
So in other words, you know those really annoying ads that we get in our junk mail? Well, those are traditionally sent out by computers, but now criminals are going after these Internet of Things devices because they're poorly secured. There's no antivirus software for them, and they're using them to send out messages, right? So they're sending out these spam messages via these other devices.
My refrigerator is my enemy.
Your refrigerator can be used against you, absolutely. And by the way, talking about cops doing investigations, in the future, the police officer may have to interrogate the refrigerator to see what the toaster did. I know it sounds mad and crazy, but all of these devices are going to be online, paying attention.
Is there, Sherlock Holmes had Professor Moriarty, is there any international crime figure? There used to be that guy who was famous terrorist, who's famous in cybercrime. Do we have a cyber criminal?
Yeah, we do actually, and there are several of them. There's no one leading figure, if you will, but if you look back, we've broken up many different organized crime organizations out there.
Are they geniuses?
They're not actually. That's the annoying thing about this, is that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. You asked me why I became involved in cybercrime investigation many years ago. It's because I'm fascinated by their ability to innovate. So they are by nature out-of-the-box thinker. They are deeply creative, and they use that creativity rather than for good, right? They're using it for ill. And
so the same mind that is in Steve Jobs could be in John Jones, who happens to be criminally driven.
Yeah, let's take Steve Jobs as a great example. When he and Wozniak were at Berkeley many, many years ago, they created something called the Blue Box. And the Blue Box was a hacking device that in the 70s allowed people to bypass the telephone network to make free long-distance phone calls, something that used to be very expensive in those days. They used the funds from that to help found Apple Computer. So these were kids who were hackers and went on to create one of the greatest companies in the history of the world.
Tom Ridge, the former head of U.S. Homeland Security, was a recent guest. He's working with a company that offers corporate insurance against hackers.
Right. Well, and there are a lot of people that are trying to do that, right? The people in corporate America are quite concerned, right? Boards of directors are being sued. CEOs are losing their jobs, as was the case with the Target hack. So there is a lot of responsibility for this data.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Larry.
Marc Goodman, the book is Future Crimes. Everything is connected, everyone is vulnerable, and what we can do about it. This is a must-read.